After going from Eastern Conference Finals to first round exit, changes had to be coming in Atlanta. And while changes have been made, Trae Young has lost his backcourt mate in Kevin Huerter and has been replaced with Dejounte Murray. Not to mention the fact the Hawks have acquired some improved defensive role players via the trade of Kevin Huerter. So what does a backcourt of Dejounte and Trae Young look like? And are these changes enough for the Hawks to be title contenders? Let's talk about it. Arguably, the two biggest weaknesses for the Hawks last season was perimeter defense, specifically from their guards, and the lack of a secondary playmaker and shot creator. They put a solid dent in fixing those weaknesses with the acquisition of Dejounte Murray. The biggest win about the Hawks' acquisition of Dejounte Murray is that they did so not giving up significant talent currently on the roster, having only traded away Danilo Gallinari and only 2 of their own first-round picks. Gallinari was a valuable piece to the Hawks last season, but certainly not irreplaceable in this rotation, and his role as a depth forward was also filled to a point in the Kevin Huerter trade, something we will discuss in a few minutes. Dejounte Murray is coming off the best season of his NBA career, an all-star appearance, and still has 2 years left on his contract. Dejounte does a little bit of everything. He can create for himself and for others, he rebounds, he can defend well. He is so very impactful in every area of the game, and it means that he leaves a positive print on the game every single night. There are some adjustments that Dejounte Murray and Trae Young will have to make to their games playing alongside each other, but Dejounte immediately comes in and fits in several positive ways while taking the pressure off of Trae Young on offense from a playmaking and shot creation standpoint. Firstly, Dejounte Murray will fit in very well with the pick-and-roll game with Clint Capella and Okongwu. Dejounte has great vision and passing ability and will certainly be able to get good opportunities for those two centers, even when Trae Young is not the one involved in that pick-and-roll. Most importantly, Dejounte Murray will make the offensive game for Trae Young from a playmaking and scoring regard that much easier. Defenses will no longer be able to just focus on Trae Young from a shot creation and playmaking standpoint, which was arguably the weakness of the Hawks' offense over previous seasons. We've seen in the playoffs, specifically in this last series this year against Miami, where you just get to focus up on Trae. And there's no penalization for it because no one else can really create their own bucket or create for others at a decent rate. You have that now in Dejounte Murray. Teams will get burned a lot more for double teaming and hedging heavily on Trae Young, allowing for more space to operate than we've ever seen Trae have throughout his entire NBA career. Although it will be an adjustment, Trae Young will get to explore playing off the ball for the first time in his career thanks to having another playmaker on his team, and that's arguably potentially the most exciting part of this duo. We could see Trae get way more catch and shoot opportunities, something he's very good at, allowing Trae to get more open looks and be in more favorable situations on offense to get open catch and shoot looks or to take advantage of the defense recovering to him around screens. This can result in Trae being able to create for himself and others without him having to initiate the offense every single time. So Trae can be in more advantageous situations with the ball in his hands than he often otherwise is when initiating every single offensive possession. Now, will this off-ball game be an adjustment for Trae? Certainly, but he has the skill set for this increased offensive freedom to result in another level of improvement moving forward. It will be an adjustment for Dejounte as well to play more off of the ball, especially considering he is nowhere near as good of a three-point shooter, which is why I emphasize the off-ball development of Trae in comparison to Dejounte. But that is not to say that Dejounte won't play significant time off the ball as well, as I'm sure he will, as Trae Young is still the best scorer on this team. But Trae has much more upside on the offensive end and can certainly unlock another level to his offensive game and in turn to this Hawks offense if he does continue to improve his off-ball play, thanks to the addition of Dejounte Murray. Of course, Trae Young is still the best player on the roster, he's the best scorer, and the best playmaker, but the addition of Dejounte Murray just allows for that much more freedom for Trae and takes a lot of creation responsibility off his shoulders. And that's just the offensive impact from Dejounte. Murray is an elite perimeter defender, and that defensive presence helps what is arguably the biggest weakness on this roster, their guard defense. The Hawks really struggled for defensive consistency last season, and with Trae Young being one of the worst defenders in the NBA, having Dejounte alongside him to defend the opposing team's best guards is a great pairing on the defensive end of the floor. No longer do Trae Young or Kevin Huerter have to defend the team's best guard. Now you have an elite defender in Dejounte Murray, which will make a significant positive impact on this Hawks defense next season. In lieu of the Hawks acquiring Trae Young's new backcourt mate, they traded away his former two-guard in Kevin Huerter for some more depth, defensive help, and replaced a future first-round pick. This is very good value for a player of the caliber of Kevin Huerter, as alongside the first-round pick, they didn't just get salary fillers in return. They got actual rotational wings, something they needed after the trade of Kevin Huerter and trading away Danilo Gallinari, not to mention the fact that these rotational players address some of the needs directly applicable to this Hawks roster, and that's defense. Justin Holiday is a professional veteran who shoots the three ball quite well and competes quite well on the defensive end, something the Hawks need more of. And Mo Harkless is another solid vet who certainly won't give the same three-point shooting and scoring of Gallinari, but provides some physical play, some solid defense, and again, the Hawks needed defense. Their offense is good. They needed more defensive quality, and adding these as under-the-radar additions alongside a first-round pick for Kevin Huerter is a very underrated and under-the-radar return that certainly helps the Hawks address their defensive needs via some depth additions. So ultimately, the key question, and only question that really matters, is what do these moves mean for the Hawks next season, and does it make them good enough to be amongst the best in the East? Well, they are certainly better. They've made moves to significantly improve their defense and their creation. Dejounte Murray addresses a lot of the issues on offense that were a result of the lack of ball handling and creation outside of Trae, and he will also give a significant improvement to the perimeter defense. Their depth additions of Justin Holiday and Mo Harkless also help defensively, providing some much-needed and improved defense on the wing off the bench. But from a big picture perspective, the Hawks' best player is still Trae Young, and their second best player in Dejounte Murray. And that's a solid 1-2 punch. But when you compare them across the rest of the East, it doesn't quite line up with the top-tier teams. And you could argue that Trae Young might not be quite the ideal number one option on a title contending team, and that Dejounte Murray is more of a number 3 offensively on a title contending team than a number 2. Although those are both opinions that you could debate. But when you compare the Bucks, who have the best player in the league alongside Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton, the Celtics, who have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown alongside Defensive Player of the Year Marcus Smart and newly acquired Malcolm Brogdon after reaching the NBA Finals, the Miami Heat, who have playoff riser Jimmy Butler alongside Bam and Hero, and the 76ers, who have MVP candidate Joel alongside James Harden, the Hawks' stars and that core doesn't quite match up alongside the rest of the pack. Now, don't get me wrong, a duo of Trae Young and Dejounte Murray is still very good, but it is likely a tier below these 4 teams in the East. They might finish above 1 or 2 of them in the regular season, but come the nitty-gritty of the playoff time, their stars aren't quite at that same level, and that could end up being their downfall. So they probably aren't amongst the elites here in the East, but they very well will be amongst the best of the rest alongside the Bulls, the Raptors, and the Cavs, which is still very good company to be in what is a very strong Eastern Conference. The Hawks have made some great moves this offseason, and they have addressed some of their most prominent weaknesses. But the NBA is a league ran by and determined by star players. And unfortunately for the Hawks, their star power doesn't currently match up with the best in the Eastern Conference.